Welcome to Made in Taiwan. This is an interview with Jennifer Su in California about her childhood memories in Taiwan. And so we'd like to begin with the question of when did you get to Taiwan and why did you get there? What were the circumstances of your arrival in Taiwan and how old were you at the time?
Okay, I was born in Shanghai in 1958. Okay, but I live with my parents and two older sisters. Okay, my grandfather, who was a high-ranking KMT government official, and during the communist when the communists took over China, so my grandfather took my brother, who was the eldest son in the family, and with my uncles and sisters to Taiwan. And my father was told to stay in Shanghai to take care of my grandma because my father was the oldest. Okay. So, and also at that time, my grandfather thought it would only take 1 or 2 years that they will go back to China. So, just try to make sure that both sides, we had just, they have to leave the hope and opportunities from both sides. So my father stayed in China, Shanghai, to take care of his mom and waiting for my grandfather eventually, if things, didn't go well in China. So eventually my grandfather promised that, he will figure out, make whatever effort to bring them to Taiwan. Okay. But then in 1958, I was born. And when my grandfather uh, found out it was another girl, so at that time, people still think, how do you say, value boy and think lightly of girls. So my grandfather told that my father that I should be given away because it is very hard to get a passport through Hong Kong. So my grandfather said, I can only get 4 passports, two for my parents and two for my sisters. So I was only 1 year old. So my grandfather said, okay, definitely, you have to give this child away. But my father saved me. My father said, we have been 1949 that communists took over China. So my father said it's already been almost 10 years. Everybody was poor, but everybody, had hope that China eventually will be strong. So my father said, if you're not going to get a passport for for me, he said, well, then we're not going back. We're not going to Taiwan. We just decide to stay in China, and this family, we are going to stay together. So my grandfather always had this kind of a sense of guilt. So he said, okay, I will try the best. So then he got me a passport. So we from Shanghai to Canton to Hong Kong. So then 1959, I landed in Taiwan. That's the story.
And so when you came to
And my father didn't tell me this until he passed away. My mom told me.
Wow. Wow. And your grandfather didn't say anything about this either to you?
Didn't say anything about it. And so actually, he didn't like me at all. And when we first moved to Taiwan, we were very poor because we had to rely on my grandfather's support financially, because during that time it was not easy for my father to find a job. And plus, my father grew up in a gentry class. He didn't really need to work because he just need to collect the money and rent from all those farmers. So all he did, his young life, it just play and read. Don't have to worry about how to make a living. So when he came to Taiwan, it's hard for us. So my grandfather lived with us and who support us financially. So he didn't like me at all until my mom always tried to protect me, and my father also treated me nicely. But my grandfather didn't like me until I remember when I was in elementary school, and I was a very good student. I received so many kinds of awards. Then my grandfather started thinking that that I can be trained. There's hope. So he and then he liked me a lot. And every time I receive awards, he took me to this place where they can frame the awards. So yeah. So and I remember when I was 10 years old, he gave me a very big birthday party. I was 10 years old. Yeah.
Can you remember what your earliest childhood experience in Taiwan was, or do you have any memories of early on in after your arrival in Taiwan?
You say, when did I think when I was in kindergarten. So, and then later on, because we live in this how do you say, government officials neighborhood. So all I met or our neighbors, they were all from mainland China, so-called mainlanders. So the experience that I grew up, it's very different from local people. So we live in this kind of a neighborhood and circle, all mainlanders. So and then my mom is a stay-at-home mom, so she's very old-fashioned. Her job is just make sure that cook 3 meals and take good care of us. So I think even though my father taught me a lot, the Chinese poetry and calligraphy, those are the daily practice that I have to do. And I grew up in this kind of environment. My grandfather read a lot, so he introduced me this kind of classic books. And my father read lots of stories to us, like Romance of Three Kingdoms and Dream of Red Chamber. That's a taboo. We're not allowed to read that. So he read us lots of good books, classical novels. And my mom, she took care of us, just make sure we have good food to eat. She was a good cook. So that's the reason why it gave me how do you say it, a peace of mind, because every day I came home, I know mom is there and the food will be put on the table. So I think that's very important. Yeah, and both my parents are very kind and nice people.
I see. But did you also have formal education, elementary school education
Yes,
in Taiwan?
yeah,
And this was for the mainlanders only, or you went to a Taiwanese school?
I went to most mainlanders. So this is probably is not very good because at that time we always think we're a little bit superior to those. We have this kind of sense of feeling superior to those local people who speak different dialect, and we were never encouraged to learn the local Hakkanese or Fukienese dialects. So I didn't know how to speak Fukienese, Taiwanese. So that's kind of a shame because I lived there for almost more than 20 years. I still don't know how to how to speak the dialect. Yeah. So this is something my entire family, we just live in that small circle until I went to high school. I met lots of smart, very nice, classmates who are Taiwanese. So I start making friends with them. When I was little, because my mom always cooked at home, so she didn't let us eat outside, eat local flavor of food. So I was very very narrow in this aspect. And when I went to high school, finally, first time I was introduced to Japanese food. Yeah. And then also I grew up in this kind of environment. All my families, they've been through this China-Japan war. So they had a very bitter memories about this invasion.
So
So,
how did you get to eat Japanese food then?
oh, because my high school friends invited me to their house, her house. I remember this girl. So her parents, grandparents, they all received Japanese education. So that's the first time I experienced, wow, this is actually this kind of Japanese influence. It's everywhere in Taiwan. I speak. The reason why I was not introduced, I was not exposed in this kind of environment because I live in this government high-ranking official neighborhood community. So that's the reason why. And the school that I went to all mainly are mainlanders. So until high school, because we need to pass this entrance examination. So if you're a good student, you got into this very good high school and college. So so
This
that's
applied also to high school and college
and
in
the college.
Taiwan?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. So
I see.
when I went to college, I most of my good friends they're Taiwanese. Yeah.
I
So
see.
I went to National Taiwan University, which is the best university in Taiwan. So that's the also my second time to meet, to encounter all those elite, smart people, and also my school is supposed to be very liberal. So the professors always, try to convey and give us this kind of free spirit and liberal ideas.
I may return to your earlier childhood a little bit. Can you describe what a normal day in elementary school or middle school looked like?
Yeah,
You went to school, obviously, but also came home for lunch, it sounded like.
yeah. School time, elementary school, got up early, and my mom always made sure that we have breakfast. Then we took. I remember. I think first grade or second grade, my mom sent us to send me and my brother to school. But then start from third grade, I just took a bus. It was very safe with my friends, so it's very safe. And we stay in school. Uh, I would say our school life was very good, worry free, because later we didn't have to pass the junior high school's entrance examination. So all those 6 years, it was a wonderful memory because I joined the choir and I did sports and I did lots of speech competition, and I also joined the theater. So I had a very good memories about my school life.
When you did theater, what kind of theater plays did you
Or
participate?
it's not it's like how do you say? It's a classical thing. It's like a Peking opera, those kind of thing. Yeah, because my teacher who trained me, she was from Beijing. Yeah. So anyway, I think it's more diverse. So you think back then you had lots of talent in many areas, but then those areas gradually disappeared because later on, once you went to junior high and high school, the focus is the subject that will help you pass the entrance examination.
Right.
So
Right.
those kind of theater and paint art, music class were not emphasized.
So when you went to school in elementary school and junior high school and you took the bus, um, did you have any sense that your parents didn't want you to play with certain kids, or, and also what was your relationship to boys and girls at the time? Was that all equal, or because you mentioned your grandfather didn't think highly of you as a girl, as a baby girl, how did that manifest in Taiwan when you were a child?
When I was a child, I didn't get that kind of a feeling because very soon my grandfather think I'm a smart one, so I can learn well. So then he treated me nicely, and my father he never had that kind of a how do you say bias or favoritism.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was and then probably my mom would say, oh, don't play with those kids who I would say I also we have a certain kind of a village only the soldiers, military people who
Mhm.
came to Taiwan with Chiang Kai-shek, and they were arranged to stay in a certain village. And those kids usually very rebellious. So my mom said, "Well, don't play with them." So and then my neighborhood, I didn't have any Taiwanese neighbor friends live with us. So all my playmates were those mainlanders kids. So and then we played together all the time. I had lots of playmates.
You played, what kind of games did you play with your friends outside of school?
We play playhouse. We made our own toys. We do those imaginary things, and we went to Riverside, which near where we live. We tried to steal. How do you say sweet potatoes?
Uh-huh.
And we also went to this big sports field, but it's how do you say it's waste, sort of like wasteland. But we went there sort of adventure. So yeah, it's until I would say until junior high, I had a very carefree, worry-free life. And elementary school, I could play with boys only in school. But junior high, high school, I just went to those girl high, junior high. So I didn't have that many opportunities to play with boys. And my mom also told me you cannot have boyfriend when you're in junior high or high school. So I obeyed that. So
Very good. Good girl.
uh,
What were other values that you feel your parents have nurtured in you?
okay. Yeah. My parents always say, okay, be kind. I remember be kind to people. Be friends with books. So that means, literally be friends with books. That means you need to become a learned person. So I read lots of my family. It's weird, okay, because we lived in Shanghai for a long time, even though or not original from Shanghai, but my family listened to this, pop music in the 30s and watch picking up Peking opera. So it's totally different from the experience that I know until high school to be with friends. Their family totally influenced by the Japanese culture. Uh, so my family is still living like 30s in Shanghai, and my father introduced us to watch lots of Western films. And I read, I don't know, Arsène Lupin, Gentleman Burglar. I don't know if you have heard of this story. Oh, I read those in Sherlock Holmes, and I read in high school. I read Dream of Red Chamber. So this is my upbringing. It's different from the majority of Taiwanese people. It's different. So yeah,
Do you
it's very.
remember when you were first aware that you were sort of relatively isolated within the mainlander community, and then you broke out of that at college? But did you always have an awareness of that?
I yeah, I think a little bit, yeah, but I didn't. I yeah, so I think high school that was the first time I start to meet all people from different backgrounds, all different backgrounds, because I still believe in that kind of entrance examination system because it doesn't matter what kind of background you came from. As long as you study, you work hard, then you can pass the entrance examination to enter to get into a good school. So when I was in junior high, no, I think high school, I start, yeah, that kind of experience to meet people from all different kind of backgrounds.
And did you find that interesting, or did it come naturally, or what were your thoughts? What thoughts
I
do you
found the
remember?
first, wow, it's very interesting and very new to me. So, and then later on, I like to know more about them. Why our concept, the view to Japanese people are so different. So then they told me their story from their parents' experience. So I start realize that that uh, yeah, just try to be interested in knowing different kind of experience, a different kind of cultural background, which I think is good for me. Yeah.
When you think about the kinds of conversations you had with your parents at the dinner table, for instance, or other occasions when you got together, do you remember what kind of conversations you would typically have and what they were about?
Mm. When my grandfather's still alive, and you know, Taiwan went through those white terror. So ever since when I was little, I heard my grandfather mention lots of people, generals or journalists who try to, how do you say, criticize that Chiang Kai-shek, dictatorship, and they got into trouble. So even though we were not allowed to join the conversation. But ever since when I was little, my father, my grandfather, their friends, they came to my house and they had this, conversation. I can always, I, I listened to them, even though I didn't know what really going on. But then those names stick in my mind. So when I was in college, actually I embrace this kind of liberal thought. So I start because when I was in college, that progressive party, those kind of things, yeah. So I start. I how do you say? I was on their side, yeah. So I think my grandfather actually also oppose against Chiang Kai-shek's the dictatorship, white terror, but he didn't really express that idea openly. But I heard when they had a small meeting and conversation with his friends, I that kind of thing actually is in my mind when I was little. Yeah. So.
And you said you were not allowed to participate in the conversation. Was that because you were a child, or
Yes.
was it your grandfather's circle that was? Did your
Yeah, you're
parents?
not
Yeah.
allowed because when those adults, they are having a meeting. Not you can maybe listen to it, on the side, but we're not allowed to join the conversation. Yeah. So my upbringing still it's very old fashioned. Yeah. So.
Did you, you said old fashioned, but do you feel that you had a happy childhood?
Yes, always very calm and peaceful because your mom always, your mom always take good care of you and prepare lunchbox for you every day. Not like my other classmate mom, they're working mom, so mom always just give them money, so they need to purchase food. So they envy me that I can bring a good food, a good lunchbox. I share this with them because my mom, she's very nice. She she also want us, be kind and oh compassion. So I always share food with my friends. So when I
And,
was
and
in college, I asked my mom to prepare three boxes for me because yeah. So
what kind of food did your mom cook?
Shanghai style, Shanghainese style. She's a
Ah,
good cook. Yeah.
wow, very interesting.
Mm.
What kind of vision did you have of what kind of grown up you wanted to become as a child? What kind of vision did you
Yeah, I
have?
want to become a journalist, and also I want to be teachers because most of my family's relatives, either professors or teachers, or work for the government. So this is something I always know that I want to do. So I first became a journalist. I passed the journalism exam. So I worked for a radio station for a year, and yeah, and I taught at Stanford Language Center right after I graduated from National Taiwan University. So that was the first time encounter foreigners, and they were my students. So yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what kinds of words come to mind when you think about your childhood in Taiwan, or do you remember anything specifically Taiwanese? And you already mentioned that you were in this Chinese mainlander community, but when you think about your children's childhood in the US, for instance, in comparison, can you characterize your childhood in Taiwan a little bit?
One thing that I'm very thankful and to my father because you know when I heard the story, because in the 50s 60s Taiwan's still very poor, right? So there are lots of Taiwanese families that they gave away their uh, daughters. So this is even I had Santa Barbara is a small town, but I had three female friends. They were all adopted by other people because they were daughters, so they were given away. So then I look at my father, what he did for me, and then my grandfather spent so much money tried to get a passport for me because my father fight for it. So I really thank them. So I would say I grew up in an environment. Actually, I will treat it fairly and also nicely if you are willing to be good, if you are willing to be, how do you say, not ambitious, but you have this, how do you say, aspiration, want to achieve something, you are valued. So that's the feeling I got.
Wonderful. Do you remember any particular book that you liked from your childhood?
Oh, I love lots of books. The Arsène, oh, I don't know how to, Arsène Lupin's Gentleman, Burglar, Sherlock Holmes, and I also read lots of love and romantic novels. After I finished all of them when I was in elementary school. Okay, very sentimental until when I went to junior high the first year, my uncle told me, stop reading all those nonsense novels. Okay, you need to read this. Taipei was written by Kenneth Pye, so you need to read this novel. So then that was first time I was introduced to this novel. I read it. Oh, I said, wow, this is a wonderful, wonderful novel. It's definitely a work of art for each story. And then later on, I read lots of Japanese translation novels. I read a lot of Japanese novels, and then also read lots of classical novels. So, Dream of Red Chamber, that was my favorite when I was in high school. But there were lots of things I didn't understand because the, how do you say, the sex education I never taught. It was never, it was a taboo. My mom didn't tell us, didn't tell us anything about this. So I read lots of those kind of things that sort of understand, but sort of don't understand. So until college, yeah. So I read lots of, and I remember the good memories about um, childhood was, when we first got a TV. Oh, your neighborhood people came to your house to watch TV, and I remember I loved to watch The Saint, Simon Templar. I don't know if you watched that series. And Green Hornet, Bruce Lee was in it, and The Saint, Roger Moore was in it. All those, how do you say, chivalrous stories really influenced me. So, so I want myself also to be a chivalrous women. And also I like certain character from Dream of Red Chamber. So yeah, so those some of the women are my role model.
Can you name one of those characters?
I love Shi Xiangyun. Shi Xiangyun, yeah, she was a very chivalrous person. And also, when I was in college, I also read lots of those translations. I also read lots of existentialism novels, even though maybe I didn't quite understand. But I think my high school and the college education was pretty good because professors and teachers introduce us to lots of foreign novels. Sometimes I ask my daughter and my son, what kind of novels you read in high school? I think most of them are just American novels. But when I was in high school and college, we were introduced to German and French novelist, and also read lots of Japanese novels. So I think it's more well-rounded. That's what I thought. But now I don't know because Taiwan now they try to get rid of the influence of Chinese culture. So I don't know if that is good.
Well, wonderful. Is there anything a last word on your childhood in Taiwan that you would like to share?
I think this, actually Taiwan is very unique because after 1949, Chiang Kai-shek took lots of mainlanders to Taiwan, and those soldiers and government officials came from all different provinces and who had this nostalgic feeling and homesick. And so they try to bring the flavor of food from certain province to Taiwan. So we have Shanghainese restaurant, we have Sichuan cuisine, we have all different kinds of local flavor of foods, and also different kinds of culture. And then 50 years influence of Japanese culture. That was also very strong feature streak of part of Taiwanese culture. And we also have this indigenous culture. So I think this is Taiwan is very unique. I am very thankful that I grew up in this kind of environment. Before, we were only educated, uh, how do you say, China Center education, even though we never been to China, okay? But we learned Chinese geography, all those things, and we also we were only taught, okay, you're Chinese, okay, eventually you're gonna go back to China. So 1990, that was first time that I went to China. My mom told me you need to visit Nanjing, where we lived there for a long time. So I went there to visit, the place where my parents lived for a long time. But you know what? I totally disillusioned because before I was, oh, I'm Chinese from mainland China. But then after 1990, I have to tell everybody that I am Taiwanese because to me, your hometown is the place where you have all the memories. So we were taught you are Chinese, that you are mainland. Eventually, you're gonna go back to China. But the first time I stepped into this land, so-called motherland, I didn't have any memories. I don't have a homesick or nostalgic feeling. How can I say that I am, you know, from people from Shanghai, people from Jiangsu province? So after 1990, I embrace the culture. I embrace that I'm being a Taiwanese, even though I don't know if they really think I'm Taiwanese. But I think I'm 100% Taiwanese because I was born in Shanghai. I didn't have any memories. And then I grew up and raised in Taiwan, received all the good education from Taiwan. So then I have to say, I tell everybody that I'm Taiwanese.
That's wonderful. Very nice last words for our interview. Thank you so much, Jennifer.